man, we can just feel the celebrity, rolling off. Harlan, thank you so much for taking the time. He's the godfather of legal marketing.
Yeah,
Take it
that
away.
means that I have a lot of gray hair, and I've been around a while. You know, in advertising, there's an old adage, and my mentor, Bill Meiskens from 1975, insisted that I understand that you get what you ask for. And that applies to all entrepreneurship. That applies to to almost anything in life. When we trying to communicate with our kids, there's a hidden word in intake and conversion. And first of all, intake and conversion is it's not a dirty word. It's a profitable phrase. What blows my mind about intake and conversion, and that I've been obsessed with this. I've been obsessed with this for years and years. In fact, so obsessed that I built software, Lead Docket. I was, put my money where my mouth is, and I was really focused. But just to set the tone, where this all came about is my clients came to me, as well as you all that are out there, and you say to your agency, give me more leads. Well, what did you do with the last ones? Well, they weren't any good. And so that's the essence and the basis of this entire conversation. And, most of the time I feel like I'm a broken record, but the truth of the matter is there's about 4,000 lawyers that advertise on television in this country, and there's about 500 pieces of software that are managing CRM, their intake and conversion. And what does that mean? That means that there's a tremendous amount of arrogance. There's a tremendous amount of lawyers that say, well, I get everything that I want. I get 94% of this. I get that. And this entire conversation really, Bill, is based on what you don't know. How many times should you call somebody back to get an answer? Well, smart people say until they say no. Other people say, well, I'm going to call 3 times, because if they didn't want me, the first time, then why would I want them? And so this whole conversation about what we call the chase is the subject of today. So really the subject is, how do we get more out of what we have spent to convert more cases in our practices? And in essence, what we're really talking about here is increasing your business without spending any more money. You've already spent the money. The chase is a very interesting dichotomy for me. If you sit back and you ask really have a heart-to-heart or talk to your intake and conversion people, your intake team, or your ambassador of first impressions that I call, anybody that answers the telephone, and you really talk to them and you figure out, well, how are they chasing after, leads? Well, they weren't home, or I didn't connect, or they wouldn't call me back. Those are all very, to me, unacceptable answers. The only answer is a yes or a no. No is the second best answer on the planet. You know exactly where you stand. I really want to focus our attention on what the chase is. The chase is getting that answer, yes or no. Both are very good answers. And what amazes me, Bill, is the denial aspect of intake and conversion, and intake really for law firms. I mean, who wouldn't want to convert more cases that you've already spent money on getting them to call? But why is there such arrogance or denial or overlook in this department? I could never really figure that out. And I just think that it's what you don't know, which, as you know, I trademarked in the legal arena. And what the chase will allow you to do is simply increase your business. It's found money, because you already said no to it. If you're not chasing it, you're not interested. And there's a number of different ways to approach this. The first thing that you really have to accept is metrics. Interesting enough, almost every lawyer that I know walks into their office or looks at their dashboard, and the very, very first thing that they look at is, how many cases did we sign? I just want to know how many cases we signed. What do we have? That is the mentality of looking what's right in front of you. But truly, where the gold is and where the benchmark is how many calls did I get? Because you're paying for every one of those calls. I think the average is about $125 for a call. Whether it's a lead or not, every call is a lead. I think you need to really seriously focus on the calls more than the cases. The cases will come if the calls are there. The whole conversation about
Can you explain that really quick? Every call is a lead. What do you mean?
Well, every time that phone rings in your office, you've spent money to make it ring. Bottom line, you know, good, bad, or indifferent. If somebody calls from prison or somebody calls from, you know, from hell on earth, and they're certainly not a case, you've paid $125 an average. It's an average. You'll have to figure out what your economics are to simply say no. So of course you want better calls. Better calls will convert into better cases. But if you follow the calls and you follow and have your agency understand where the calls are coming from, you have a much better way to manage getting better calls. You know, what is a better call? A better call is somebody with a case that you want. But the chase is rather interesting. You know, I don't want to go down the wrong rabbit hole here. I want to really stay focused on what the chase is. The chase is when somebody calls you, whether you take the case or not, you have a disposition of the phone call. It's amazing if you take a look at your practice, if you take a look at your, you know, the practices of how many people that are unaccountable. You know, well, I didn't reach them, or I didn't, nobody answered, or they won't call me back. Look at all those excuses that that people in your intake department come up with. It's amazing. I mean, it really is. If you put it on paper and you look at use a CRM, you know, such as let's say just a lead docket, which shows you everything, or Salesforce, which is very, very elaborate. You'll see exactly what's missing. What's missing is the follow-up. You know, people have a different intuition of what follow-up is. You know, I followed it up, and they didn't respond to me. The only sensible follow-up to me is a resolution, which is a yes or a no.
I agree 1,000% with what you're saying. I talked to a new consulting client yesterday who in 2019 turned down 854 cases. And do you know how many he referred to another law firm? 4. I just want to say that what you're talking about, I agree with. It's such a missed opportunity. We make millions of dollars a year off those other 850 cases. And what you're talking about is just absolutely right on.
I really appreciate your comment because it's totally relevant. It's called paying attention to every detail. You know, it's kind of interesting, you know, when you turn somebody down, or when you say that I can't help you, it's how you leave that conversation will determine how they feel about you. So when you talk about the chase is chasing after the lead. It's chasing after something. And you have to really be obsessed with doing that. But most importantly, you have to be accountable for it. And the only way to be accountable for it is to have vivid, transparent metrics. And if anybody wants to argue about that, then they're just not into this conversation, or they don't understand what accountability is. You know, the funny thing about this business, and Michael, you know this, and Bill, you've heard this many, many times, is that we count what we have. You know, there's no industry that I know of that there's no ceiling on how much you can make. A poor lawyer, a lawyer that doesn't really isn't hungry, can still make a phenomenal living. You can walk into a bar and find a case by sitting next to the guy or the person next to you and be a millionaire overnight. I mean, that's pathetic. But the truth of it is this is a business and it has accountability. You know, think about all the times you walk into a retail store and the clerk comes to you, or the salesperson comes to you and says, you know, hi, hey, how can I help you? Yeah, I'm looking for a sport jacket. Well, they're over there. Okay, they're over there. It's salesmanship. But people hire me for profit. My entire life revolves around making money for my clients and showing them how to make money. And I'm just going to tell you in my little segment that paying attention to what we call the chase and having metrics in place is the golden goose. Because what it will tell you is what you're missing. And if you don't know what you're missing, you'll never get it. And I can assure you, in just to harp on what Mike, or comment what on Mike Morse, who's absolutely brilliant when it comes to intake and conversion. Well, he's not really brilliant. What he really does is pay attention, and he has accountability. Maybe that's brilliant. If somebody calls my office or calls a client of mine's office 800 times, I guarantee you there's going to be more than 4 cases in there. There's going to be more than 40 cases. There's going to be more than 80 cases in there. There's going to be more than 20% of your calls that are cases. You know, it's about listening. It's about understanding who's calling you and investing the time to discuss, to talk, to turn down, to turn up every call that comes into the office. Now, lawyers will debate that. I was on a website, and I love the guys and the people that are on this website, but they were debating, you know, what do you do and how do you answer somebody that has a question? You answer the question. It's how somebody feels about when they call your law firm, how they are taken care of, how they're communicated with. It's an investment. And when we talk about the chase is communicating, touching base, getting a definite yes or no from everything that's coming at you, because the most important thing that you can walk away from in this conversation is everything, every action, everything that happens to your law firm, you're paying for. You're paying for, and you want to get a result. The more you pay attention, the better the metrics are, the less you're in denial about what you think the client is thinking, the better off you are. You know, it's kind of interesting. The last thing I want to say about the chase is, you know, we answer telephone calls and we call people back and they don't respond to us, but we don't know what's going on in their life. We don't know what happened to them that day. You know, if Michael Morse calls me and I don't get back to him for 3 days, there's a reason. You know, who knows what happened? My wife could be yelling at me. I could have gotten a flat tire and I'm still standing on the side of the road, but you never know what's happening with the other person. So never make the assumption that you think you know. And that's what we call the chase. The chase is anybody you are running after to get a resolution for. And if you really want to button up your practice and you really want to understand really good marketing, then get an answer for every dollar that you spend, which means get an answer for every conversation that takes place in your office. I know that lawyers are going to tell me that that's a waste of time, and you don't want to waste time with people that don't have cases. You don't want to waste time with anybody that you can't monetize and have a transaction. I'm going to tell you that as a false sense of security. That's a false answer. Because you're spending advertising dollars to make that telephone ring, good, bad, or indifferent. And you want to perpetuate your brand in the most honest, the most profitable, the most forthright way. And that means that you have to talk to people. It costs money to do that, but it costs a lot more money to ignore or to assume or to say, well, they don't want to do business with me, so I'm going to call. You know, I tried them 3 times. It's unacceptable.
Yeah, I think a good point there is that, you know, oftentimes the cases in PI, for example, with like the best liability and like the best case, they're going to call multiple law firms. And when they talk to those other law firms, you know, there's a chance one of them is going to be implementing the chase, but they're going to be getting such positive signs on those intake calls because the other lawyers are going to be showing that this is a good case, right? And they're going to pick up 2 and 2, and they're going to be flooded with options. And that's why if you're the last person, if you're the first person they call and the last person that calls them, that's how you're covering up your space. So I really appreciate that, is increasing average case value. And I heard you talk about this recently. And, you know, I'm curious if you'd agree with this, that, you know, one of the easiest, lowest barrier to entry steps a lawyer could ever take is making public the types of cases you want, right? So if you want certain higher verdict potential cases, right, but all of your marketing is around car wreck or, you know, these soft tissue niches, and you don't have anything out there that clearly says, whether it's in certain messaging of your brand, you know, those higher average case value cases you want, do you think that's a simple solution for a lawyer to go and audit their marketing and go, wait a second, am I clearly stating in my marketing messages that I want cases of X, Y, or Z type? If so, I could attract more of those cases.
You know, my mentor was the executive creative director at J. Waller Thompson, and decided to want to get into into syndicating television commercials for upper end retail. And he sat me down in 1975 and he says, listen, I'm going to teach you the business. But let me tell you the most important thing I'm going to say to you, and the most important thing in advertising, is you get what you ask for. And I built my backbone. My backbone is you get what you ask for. And I also feel very strongly that you're going to talk to the public you would a jury. So be very specific as to what you want. And to advertise everything is not profitable, because you're taking is a scatter approach. To focus, to get what you want, to get what you ask for, is the most logical approach to life, and you'll get your best answer. If I want trucking cases, be very sure that you're asking for trucking cases, not cases. When you discipline or you have to get into an important conversation with your children, you better be sure you are on target and they understand what you're asking them to do. You know, I think it was back in college in 101 psychology. You know, when you said, now tell me what I just said. You know, Bill, tell me what I just said. Repeat back to me what I just said so that we can conclude the conversation. I want to make sure that you understand what I asked you. And the same thing is in advertising. You get what you ask for. When you talk about value of cases, you know, every lawyer I've ever met wants the big case. They want the best case. They want a wrongful death case. They want all of these things. But if you really sit back and you look at most of the advertising, and I'm going to take a guess at about 95% of the ads that are on television, they're all asking for the same thing. If you're breathing, call me. I'll get you all the money you deserve. If you've been in a fender bender, if you've been in a wreck, I'll get you a check. I love that line, by the way. But what you're getting is a wreck that somebody wants a check. If somebody is injured seriously and in the hospital, they're not thinking about how much money they're going to make. They're thinking about how their quality of life is going to continue. So it's a very, very important initiative to make sure that you get what you ask for. You know, it's interesting. Mike Morse has very interesting television commercials. He never brings in money. He never brings in, you know, the injury. What he's doing, and he's asking for, give me an opportunity to have a relationship with you because I'm a human being and so are you. That's what I get out of his television commercials. I'm not patronizing him by saying that because he's on, but I love his stuff. I love his stuff because it's so totally different, and because he's asking the public for something different. He's asking in a roundabout way, let's have a relationship. And you want to do business with people that you have that relationship with. It goes back to the chase.
Yep.
You know, if you don't get somebody on the phone, how can you sell them? Selling is relationship building. You know, he who has the best sales rep gets the deal. Truthfully, I mean, I hate to be cold about that, but it's true.
Yeah. So Harlan, thank you so much.
So just in ending it, you know, the value of the case is everything. I'd rather have a high valued case than a whole bunch of small cases, unless, you know, you got, you know, thousands and thousands. But then take a look at your overhead. Always focus on what you're asking for, and that's how you get the better value of what you need or what you want.